Hey, Mr. Wiedemer here from Mr. Wiedemer's History. Welcome to 11.3, Camelot to Crisis. Talk about Kennedy, Nixon, Ford, and Carter. How you guys be able to analyze the events of the Kennedy, Nixon, Ford, and Carter presidencies. Here we go. Alright, major events of the JFK, New Frontier, Camelot. Okay, well, the first big thing is how JFK win. He's a Catholic. Doesn't have a lot of experience. How's he going to win? Well, a big part of it would be due to television. All right, Kennedy won because the first ever televised debate happened in the 1960 election. Okay, Nixon, he refused to wear makeup. He looked pale. He was sweating a lot. Just came back from surgery. He was kind of sickly. Kennedy comes back from California from riding in a convertible. He's tan. He's youthful. He decided to wear makeup so he stands out better on camera. He just looked like a better president. Now, if you listen to this on the radio, Nixon won hands down. But if you watched it on TV, Kennedy hands down won it. And so this first time that television is going to transform the election and really cause someone to win the election thanks to television. Alright? And Kennedy's famous quote, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." Alright? So, a lot of famous things happened during Kennedy's presidency. A lot of big things. First one's Bay of Pigs. Alright? Kennedy wants to end Fidel Castro because we had a good relationship with Cuba, and then Cuba decides to join the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union, gave him all this kind of good stuff and promised him all this stuff. Let's be friends. And so they became friends of the Soviet Union. We didn't like that. So we want to oust Fidel Castro. So what we're going to do is train a whole bunch of Cuban defectors in military tactics and training to oust Fidel Castro. We send them to Cuba, and let's just say epic fail. Alright, many of them deserted. It just did not work out whatsoever. Castro stayed alive, didn't get assassinated. Bay of Pigs was a failure. And if this was all Kennedy had to define his presidency, and he stayed alive, he would not get a second term. This was disastrous. Okay, this happened not long after he became president. It was a disaster. Then, Cuba once again, Kennedy and Cuba kind of go hand in hand. The Cuban Missile Crisis, 13 days in October. Okay, Soviets plan on putting missiles on Cuba. JFK stood up to the Soviets. They backed down. If we agree to remove missiles from Turkey, okay, we agree in principle. All right, we leave many of our missiles there in Turkey, pointed at the Soviet Union. But the Soviet Union backed down. This showed Kennedy is strong, and he's not going to give up. He's going to defend the country. Okay, these 13 days in October, all right, scared the living daylights of Americans. We thought the world was going to end. And we thought the world it's over. It's going to end. It's done. What are we going to do? All right, nuclear war was upon us. But luckily, Kennedy prevailed. All right, and the Cuban Missile Crisis was averted thanks to the brilliance of JFK. All right, and he created a new defense strategy called MAD, Mutually Assured Destruction. It basically says, if the Soviet Union use your nuclear weapons on us, we'll use ours on you, and, well, we'll all both perish, and the world will end. So, let's not use the nuclear weapons, okay? MAD, Mutually Assured Destruction. Alright. So, to help developing nations fight poverty and disease, Kennedy set up the Peace Corps in 1961, also to help stop spreading communism. Because remember, in poor, impoverished nations, communism sounds good, okay? But if the country's not poor and impoverished, communism does not sound very good. So the more aid and help we give to these countries, the less likely they'll turn to communism. Okay? So the underlying aspect, stop the spread of communism. Contain the red. Contain the red. From Truman, now we're Kennedy. Contain the red. Okay? The Soviets, they're going to build up the Berlin Wall. In 1961, they blocked free movement from East and West Berlin. And here is the big Berlin Wall. Very famous wall, built in 1961, and it really separates East and West Germany, and now East and West Berlin. Okay, Berlin Wall. It's really the symbol of the struggle of the Cold War. Alright, November 22nd, 1963, JFK was assassinated. Driving down Dallas, Texas, Lee Harvey Oswald from the Texas Schoolbook Depository fired a shot, killing President Kennedy. Alright, in the Warren Commission, they investigated it. Chief Justice Earl Warren, they investigated it and found that Lee Harvey Oswald assassinated Kennedy and he was working alone. Now, Oswald was killed on his way to trial by Jack Ruby. Conspiracies abound. Was it more than one shooter? The magic bullet? Why did he do this? Was he, he was ex-CIA, so was he trained to assassinate the president? And it's all kinds of controversy, but all we know that he did die. He was assassinated November 22nd, 1963, one of the most tragic events in all the 20th century. And just like today, you remember where you were September 11th. This generation remember where they were on November 22nd. Alright, Johnson, he's going to come in, become president next, become president on an airplane, seen the picture earlier on. He's going to create what's called the Great Society, Johnson's War on Poverty. He's going to develop the Office of Economic Opportunity, the OEO, and to help against illiteracy, unemployment, and disease, everything that signifies impoverished people in America. Alright, the most impoverished parts of America, Appalachia, the Deep South, Indian reservations, and the inner city are the most impoverished areas of America. Alright, so the Great Society, it was great in concept, but it cost a lot of money. Okay, many people compare the Great Society to the New Deal, in which the government spends a lot of money to help out the welfare of the nation. Okay, but it's going to end when we have Vietnam. When it comes to guns or butter. Pay for Vietnam, pay for helping impoverished people out in America. Let's pay for Vietnam. Okay? And so the government chose guns, and so the Great Society went on the wayside. But it did help out a lot. Okay? It created Medicare, Medicaid, alright, provided Medicaid, provided help for, impoverished families, for their kids, and Medicare provides health care for people over 65. Alright, so the Great Society ending poverty, that was their goal. Didn't happen, guns or butter. Alright, Immigration Act 1965 law replaced national quotas with the global quota that favored those with special skills. Remember, in 1920s we had only a certain amount of people from this country and that country come in. Well, this 1965 Act changes the previous act from the 1920s. Alright, quick review. Kennedy won the election in 1960, large part thanks to television. He just looked better. Alright, Bay of Pigs failed invasion. Cuba did not assassinate Castro like they wanted to. Cuban Missile Crisis, 13 days in October. They thought the world was going to end, but JFK stood strong and averted nuclear war and created MAD, mutually assured destruction. You blow us up, we'll blow you up, and we all dead. Alright, JFK was assassinated November 22nd, 1963 by Lee Harvey Oswald, and LBJ created the Great Society to help fight against poverty. Alright, next up, old Richard Nixon. Alright, Nixon's first term was really good. Nixon's second term was really bad. Like most presidential second terms, not very good. As evidenced right now with Barack Obama, his second term, not very good. Alright, and so President Nixon attempted to improve American relations with the communist world. He's going to visit China. Alright, first president to do so. He'll visit China and the Soviet Union in 1972. First president to visit the Soviet Union. That's the Soviet Union. Alright, this historic trip to China greatly improved relations between the two countries. Alright, and he supported what's called détente. Alright, meaning a cooling down of tensions, of relations in the Cold War. Alright, détente. Things were getting better. The Soviet Union and the United States were beginning to talk and beginning to understand each other and come to agreements. The most famous agreements, probably the SALT I and SALT II in the 1970s, between Ford and Carter signed these. It's called the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks. Basically, they're going to reduce nuclear arsenals, USSR and the United States. Alright, so this is détente, the cooling down of the Cold War. Alright, during Nixon's first term, U.S. became leader in space exploration. We go to the moon! Alright, 9 years prior, Kennedy said, we are going to the moon in this decade. And we did. Alright, 1969. Alright, we land on the moon. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, first people on the moon. That's one small step for man. one giant leap for mankind. All right, and Nixon overwhelmingly won the election in 1972. But that's where the good of Nixon ends. All right, because his second term, serious problems. It all really stems from the election in 1972, where he kind of, had this campaign to re-elect the president, CRP or creep, and he spies on the Democratic Party, and he sends these plumbers in to bug the offices, Democratic Party, to see what's going on. He, runs a fraudulent election, overwhelmingly wins the election, and it just gets going down. It's a snowball. This is the Watergate Scandal. Came from the name the Watergate Building. That's where the head of the Democratic Party was. Nixon kept denying involvement. And they said, okay, give us your tapes. Nixon recorded. He's a very paranoid man. He recorded everything, all of his conversations, everything. Come back to haunt him because he talked about the Watergate Scandal, so he's going to have to turn in his tapes. He says, I have executive privilege. I don't have to do this. All right? They go, President, you're not above the law. So he turns him in, but he turns in the tapes with parts missing. Talk about him and his involvement in the Watergate scandal. And so they just keep, the investigation goes on and on and on. People get fired. The vice president resigns. All right? And it's just crazy. Called the, Saturday Night Massacre. Where he fires the attorney general and a whole bunch of other people involved. 7 people, I believe, in the Watergate scandal. And he's still in there. And then finally, they indict him. And they say, Mr. President, we know you're involved in the scandal. You have 2 choices. You can be impeached, or you can resign. And the president decided to resign. On August 9th, 1974, the only president in the history of the United States ever to resign from office, Richard Nixon. Only president to only president not to win the war he was in, and the only president to resign from office. All right, should have stayed 1 term, man. Should have stayed 1 term. Then you win down in history as probably a pretty good president. Second term ruined you, and you go down in history as one of the worst presidents ever. All right, and this showed that no man was above the law. Not even you, Tricky Dick. No man is above the law. All right, and this is going to help Congress pass the War Powers Act of 1973 as a way to reestablish limits on executive power. All right, it grew from Johnson to Nixon. Executive privilege, executive presidency was just getting way too big. Balance of power, separation of powers, checks and balances were getting all out of whack. So Congress is going to put an end to this, all right? And the War Powers Act specifically says, limits how when and where the president can send troops and how that happens. So with the Watergate scandal, Gulf of Tonkin, Vietnam War, many Americans were weary of the presidency. The office of president lost a lot of luster with Johnson and Nixon, and things weren't exactly going to get better here for the next 2 guys either. So after Watergate, we had Vice President Gerald Ford. He was the only president never elected to either the presidency or vice presidency to become president. What's he do when he comes in president? He pardons Richard Nixon. Really? So, many people think that Nixon picked this guy because as a deal, hey, I'll make you vice president. I'm going to resign so you'll become president if you pardon me from all my crimes. So, he becomes president and Ford pardons Nixon of all of his crimes. Really? Epic fail, Ford. Epic fail. Alright, so then Jimmy Carter becomes the next president. He tries to distance himself from Nixon. Popular thing to do, but he had a very difficult time dealing with Congress. All right, and Jimmy Carter's brother, Billy Beer, try to use his I'm his brother, so buy my products kind of thing. Jimmy Carter with his peanuts, is famous for that. 1970s, big OPEC energy oil crisis. 1970s, oil was scarce. OPEC shut down production, wasn't giving us any oil, and so the increased cost of oil hurt the economy. So there's a shortage of gas. Carter successfully, though, mediated the Camp David Accords. He says, we're going to have peace. Let's give a second term. He lost re-election for a second term because he botched the Iranian hostage situation. So Carter, things weren't going good for him either. All right, lesson review. Kennedy has all kinds of great things going on there. Bay of Pigs, not so good. Cuban Missile Crisis stood up. Mutual rejected and assassinated. LBJ tried to end poverty. Nixon detente. Alright, SALT agreements. U.S. landed a man on the moon. Nixon, Watergate ruins him. War Powers Act, rein in executive branch. Energy crisis. Carter, Iran. Don't forget, next